Today we're going to focus on our hip hinge, our body weight squat, and then also a squat with the bar loaded on our back today. First thing that you want to do in anything, in any of our movements, whether it's the deadlift, the squat, any athletic movement, is we have to learn to hip hinge properly. This is the most important thing that you can learn and practice and do to help all of your lifts. So we got Coach Kelly here, and what she's going to do, and what I want you to start off with is I want your feet almost under your hips, maybe just a little bit outside of your hips, and that's all she's going to do. Give yourself a little bit of a target. You'll see right here she's got this pull. You might want to scoot this way, just touch. You see she's got the pull behind her. What she wants to do, and all you're going to do is you're going to try to take and you're going to try to put your butt without bending your knees. You're going to have a slight bend in the knees, and then you're going to just try to put your butt and reach your butt back to this rack, which is about 6 to 8 inches off. So you'll notice what she has right now is a nice flat back. That's what we're going for. And we notice that the hips went back, she touched the pole. And then what you also will notice, and why we do this, is when she does that, you'll see that her shins are perpendicular to the floor and that the weight has shifted back into her heels. That is important for all of the lifts we do, whether they're clean, squats, or deadlifts. So she's reaching back and keeping a nice flat back, and that is your hip hinge. If you're having a hard time with that hip hinge or having a hard time keeping your back flat, there's two things to think about. Really focus on getting your butt back and also keeping your chest nice and tall in the movement. So if she sticks her chest out nice and tall and she reaches back with her hips, right there, that'll straighten that back out, and it will also take that weight. Now she has perpendicular shins and the hips are back. What a hip hinge does is it sets us in a proper position to make sure that the weight is shifted back into our glutes and our hamstrings. That's the hip hinge. So now with that in mind, we'll roll right into what would be her air squat. Just take a step out of there. So everything applies the same. With this air squat, her feet are going to come out to about shoulder width, maybe slightly further than shoulder width. Right there. She's going to take and she's going to draw her toes out just a little bit. Right there. She's going to stand straight up. She's going to stand straight up. Now that's all she does is she's going to start this movement with her hips. She's going to start with that hip hinge. See, as she's reaching her hips back, she keeps reaching back, and as she reaches back, then she starts to bend the knees. It goes down into a parallel squat. She's keeping her chest up. That's going to keep her back flat as she drives her hips back to. The cue is, even though she's not going to reach this pole, what I would tell her to do when I'm coaching her is continue to drive your hips back and bend your knees at the same time as you do the full movement. And you'll see the weight shifts back to her heels one more time. Butt back, chest tall, right there, good. One thing that she's going to also focus on the bottom of that squat, right from here, as she steps, as her hips come back, keeps her chest tall, she's going to force her knees out right from here, nice tall chest, forcing knees out, elongated spine. Weights back in the heels, you can see that. Now this is an over-exaggeration. I got my toes coming up off the ground, but that's kind of what you're looking for. Ideally, when we put weight on our bar, on our back, we're going to have our toes are going to be on our toes are going to be on the ground for stability. And then we come up, we drive up, and we take all the weight through our glutes and our hamstrings. Okay? So that's the air squat. Now we're going to move on to our back squat with the bar loaded. Give me 1 second.
I'm going to go ahead and say something while Joey's getting that bar loaded. It's one thing, sometimes it's best not to know what not to do as well. It's a lot of times we'll see when we're training our clients is those knees come forward first. And that's never a good idea because that's putting the weight strictly on the kneecap or the patella, and that's going to end up giving you knee pain and causing injury. So never let those knees come back forward first. That's why Joey's teaching us to hip hinge to make sure that that never happens. Okay.
Yep, that way it'll never come forward. You can also think another cue is if you put your hands in your hip creases right here, and then you try to bend over your hip creases right there. That will allow you to get your hips coming back. You can also set something in front of your shins. You can get a bench, set them in front of your shins, do your squat, and if your knees are sliding forward, they'll hit the bench, and that will help you to start to develop a nice squat. Okay? All right, moving on. We got the bar. Grip on the bar for your squats. Obviously, there's markings on the bar. You can see those. You're always going to place your hands, and first thing you do is make sure that you're even. For Kelly, what you're going to do, and most people typically for a back squat, your hand's going to be just outside of your shoulders. If you lack shoulder mobility and that is not a possibility for you, you just take your grip out a little bit wider on the bar to make it work for you. Not a huge deal when we're doing this. So once she has her hands straight, she's going to come up underneath the bar. Now there's two different types of squats. There's a high bar squat and a low bar squat, also known as, the high bar squat's known as Olympic squat, the low bar squat's known as a powerlifting squat. I like to focus on the powerlifting squat or the low bar squat. That's what we're going to teach first, and then I will teach you the difference between the two with the high bar squat. So low bar squat, that's all that means is the bar is just a touch lower on your back as opposed to being on your neck. Go ahead, put it on. Now put the bar up on your neck just to show the difference. That will be a high bar squat. Now if we come down here, that's your low bar squat. I'll tell you the difference here in a second why that's important. So she's going to unrack that bar. You see her hands and her elbows are right up underneath the bar. She takes her step back. One thing to note, when you unrack the bar out of the rack, you want to unrack with 2 feet. You can get yourself set under with 1 foot, but when you go to unrack, right, when you go to unrack, she's going to step it off with 2 feet and then take her step back. Here, it's important to remember, take your time. Take your time when you're getting your feet set up. And now your feet are going to be set up just like we did in the air squat, slightly outside of shoulder width. Your toes are going to be pointed out. Her chest is tall, her gaze is neutral. From here, all the same rules apply. Nothing changes from the air squat to the bar being loaded on your back. She's going to send those hips back first, and then start to bend the knees, and she's forcing her knees out, and then she comes up and dries up out of the bottom of that squat. So hips back, keeps driving back, keeps driving back, keeps driving back, and right to about parallel up. And what I say with the low bar squat, so what you might feel, and you might see some discomfort in your wrist, that is perfectly fine. You will get used to it. It's a normal kind of thing, but you can also adjust the grip to make it, to ease some of that as well. But that is normal if you're feeling pain in your wrist, completely normal. If it feels a little awkward, being this low on your back, perfectly normal. More times you do it, the better and easier it gets, and before you know it, you won't even know the difference. You'll feel completely comfortable doing this low bar squat. So, breathing on this, as she's about to descend into her squat and pull her hips back, she's going to take a big deep breath into her stomach, pull down, and then she's going to hit that bottom and bounce out. What she's trying to do when she gets down in that bottom squat is get it, nice speed, boom, bounce out of the bottom, right? And the lift starts, if she goes down in the bottom of the squat, if I place my hand on her low back, that's where she's going to press into my hand. That's where the lift starts in the squat. That's what you think about moving first when you come out of the bottom of the squat, and then you're forcing your knees apart, and you come at the top, you walk it back in. So, one other little caveat of this, and it's kind of interesting to see, but some people, you always want to walk the bar into the rack when you're finished. So the way Kelly was doing it was correct. If I came in and I had this here, and I got my bar set, came off, and I did this, and then I did my squats right there, I don't ever want to walk the bar in backwards. So I'm in an exhausted state, I'm tired. Last thing I need to do is not see where I'm going. That's where accidents can happen. So I can't see where I'm going right now. That's why we always walk it. That's why we always want to walk it back. We want to walk backwards when you're fresh. We want to walk in forward when you're tired. Okay? So we're going to unload that right there. So doing a correct low bar squat takes the pressure, puts it in the glutes and the hamstrings, takes it off the knees right there. Nice and low. You let your back always remain neutral or a little concave in a squat. We never want to round the back. A rounded back is dangerous. You have a lot of potential for injury there. So we keep it either neutral, preferably a touch concave right here, right? And what you want to do when you're doing this, you let your chest on the low bar, let your chest go where you want it to go. Don't force it to stay completely. It doesn't have to stay in a squat, especially in a low bar squat, completely vertical. You could be forward. It's more about the bar path and where it falls up in alignment with your body than it is where your chest goes for the low bar squat. Okay? All right, so now we're going to move on to the high bar squat, the Olympic squat. This typically is more comfortable for people to do on their wrists, and they don't have to have the bars lower on their back. A little bit more comfortable, and this is what you probably see most people doing. The downside to the Olympic bar squat is it does you come a little bit more forward. Your knees come a little bit more forward, your chest stays a little bit taller, and your back stays a little more vertical. It puts a little bit more pressure on the knees, and it puts a little bit more emphasis on the quadriceps as opposed to putting the pressure into the glutes and hamstrings. We're all mostly quad dominant, so that's why I prefer the low bar squat, so that you could work your glutes and your hamstrings. And I think for most women, I think that they're more apt and want to work more of their glutes and their hamstrings than they do their quads. So, but if it's more comfortable for you to do the high bar Olympic squat, do so. I would say continually though, try to work on getting your low bar squat perfected and eventually switch over to that completely. High bar squat, comes under the bar, normal grip, same thing. Bar's higher up on the neck. She's going to unrack it the same exact way, 2-foot takeoff. She steps back. She's going to put, typically in a high bar squat, the feet are a little bit closer together than they would be in an Olympic squat. Right here, and now you notice, so I was talking about bar path, this bar always should be in alignment with the first lace of your shoe. So in this Olympic squat, because the bar is higher on the back, that's going to have to force her to keep her chest taller, and that while she keeps her chest taller, her knees are going to slide forward a little bit, okay? So let's watch her. Take her hips back still. Chest stays a little bit taller, but see, you'll notice that the knees have come forward a little bit, and her chest is a little taller, and now she's going to stand up with it. And that's okay, that's fine, like I said. And depending on, like when I train my athletes, if they are a basketball player or they are a volleyball player, if we're working on vertical jump, the Olympic squat is better than the low bar squat. But for most general population, we really would like to see you get into your low bar squats. So she can rack that. So that's the difference between the two. If you're in the gym and somebody asks you, what are you doing? Or what is that? Why are you squatting like that? Explain to them there's two different squats and get all the information. There's a low bar and a high bar squat. Anything you'd like to add?
I think that's it. I just always want to recommend when you start to get into those heavier lifts, ladies, belt up and have a flat shoe. This is not a shoe that I would lift with when I'm getting heavy like that. A flat shoe or even barefoot. Belt up, and if your wrists are really bothering you, get a pair of the Strength Sisters wrist wraps. It does make a difference. And you can also use a pad if it's really bothering you and really uncomfortable. I would stress for you to try to get used to it first, because once you're used to it, it's great. I don't ever like a pad, but some people just never get used to it, and I'll show you what I mean about that.
Yeah, so yeah, feel free to use the pad. These shoes, you see, my Chucks, they're wall one level, so I like to squat in these because they don't pitch me forward. Now, if you're doing the high bar squat, a little pitch forward with some lifters on works. For the low bar squat, though, you want to be flat and have a neutral shoe that doesn't have a whole lot of cushion in it. So that's what Kelly mentioned with going barefoot. Great way, great option to it.
Here's a pad. You use it just the same way. Just always make sure it's centered on the bar, not over here, so you're out of whack and off balance. Some women really, really like these. It's just personal preference, so you decide. And it's going to take a while to perfect your squat, so just keep practicing it. Keep working on your hip hinge, and don't overgo too heavy until you know that you're ready. Okay? And that's it for the squat.
Boom.